Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pull Up a Sandbag. And Pull Up a Sandbag is where we focus on men's well-being. And today I am joined by Paul and Michael, who I am so excited to get into the same room together with. They have got so much knowledge and wisdom to share with you, and I'm looking forward to learning with them. But before we start, I always like to throw it over to the guests to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their business and where they're dialing in from. So I'll start with you, Paul, as you're on my top right.
Okay, thank you so much, Donna. Thanks again for inviting me back today. Really wonderful to share this space. And Michael, really looking forward to the conversation with you. It's always great to connect with you as well. And it's good for the first time for the three of us to be together. So really excited. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Smith. I'm from the UK, but currently based in Colombia right now. So dialing in from Colombia. I run an organization called Coaching Minds, which offers accredited coach training programs. I get my words right. And I'm also a mental health advocate that has done various training within organizations on mental health and also worked with some organizations to help remove the stigma that still exists today. That's a bit about my background. Michael, over to you.
Right, hi, thanks, Paul. Hi, Donna. Again, like you said yourself, Paul, really excited to be in the same room as you. My background is social care. So I started off my main career as social work. So I was a children and family social worker for over 13 years. I'm ringing in from England in Bristol. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So I'm in here in the UK. Was a social worker for 13 years. And then I moved on to follow my real passion, which was well-being. So well-being for the professionals. And that came about as I was noticing lots of my colleagues in social care were becoming very fatigued. There wasn't much support for them at the time. So I decided to actually do something about that and set up my wellbeing consultancy. So I've been doing that for about 7 years, 7 years this year. Yeah. And whilst I was doing that, I got a call from a mental health charity here in Bristol to come and work for them part-time. So in the last 3 years, I have become a part-time mental health practitioner and mainly focusing on working with men. So that's been a real privilege to support men's mental health here in Bristol, and I'm working with other organisations across the country as well. And that's me, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I've got so many questions, and I'm like, okay, let me quickly introduce myself and then let me get back to you. All right, I'm Donna Burfield. I'll say it really fast. No, I won't. I'm a joy and purpose coach. I'm ICF accredited, soon to be EMCC accredited through Coaching Minds. And I work with parents, and I also support coaches here in the UAE for now. So watch this space. Right, I'm going to move on because I'm really, really excited to know more about you two and how you support men with regards to this. One thing that I just really want to quickly pick up on, Michael, you were saying that you're working, with you worked in social work and you working with this charity and primarily with men. Do you find that men that work in the wellness industry, and Paul, you can answer this as well, find it maybe a little bit harder to reach out to those for support?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say yes, a little bit harder, but not sort of like, impossible. But yeah, I would agree with that. I think so. And my little experience dealing, with men is that they tend to sort of try to carry on and get on with things rather than reach out for help and support. So that's been my general experience. Obviously, I'll let Paul answer for himself, but that's what I've found.
Yeah, and I think it's a good question because as Michael says, as men in general, we tend to struggle to open up. But then I kind of also think, do we need to practice what we preach as well? If we're working in that mental health industry and we're sharing with a lot of people what they need to do, how they look after their mental health, to open up, to seek that guidance and that support, then it should really be easy for us, because if we've learned what we've learned, then we're putting that out there. So for me personally, I think it's become easier for me to be able to open up now that I've got involved in mental health training and being a mental health advocate and starting to understand it more, starting to understand the importance. It's helped me as a man to open up more. But I can also see the other side of the coin, another perspective as well, where actually it can be more difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So look, and this is interesting because today's topic is strength within, supporting men's mental health through mental health training and services, because both of you provide this and have received it as well. The reason why I asked that question is because sometimes it's really difficult when you have gone through mental health training, you've done your mental health first aid or what have you, to become a mental health advocate. It's when you are then struggling, it's a case of, well, I should know what to do, but I can't get myself out of it. Do you find that is more predominant in men rather than women who will get to that point where they go, I should be able to sort this out?
Do you want to go for?
So I don't know. I think, one thing I always think is that, mental health doesn't discriminate. And I really think it depends on the person and the background. And difficult questions today, Donna. Very difficult questions. No, but it's great. It's great. No, different angle. Yes and no, because sometimes, okay, yes, we know the tools, we know what we're going through, and it can be very difficult to apply them. But also, from past experience, I've gone through my stage of depression, everything I've done, and I've learned what not to do in those stages. When I first didn't open up, when I first didn't approach people, the first time I didn't like, the type of counseling I was receiving. So if I do catch myself slipping into that slope again, then I will reach out to someone. I always have a close friendship circle that I can reach out to. And I also always remind myself that, the tips that we do, the well-being, the mindfulness, it's not a medicine. It's not something we just take when we're not feeling good and we need to become better. It's a practice. It's something that even when we're good, we need to continue to do. So things like skipping that is a sign for me that I'm starting to slip, if I'm starting to miss my meditation, if I'm starting to miss the journaling that I do, all that sort of stuff. So I try and keep it ongoing all the time so that I'm in a better stage if I do start to catch myself slipping into that state again. Michael, I don't know if there's anything you have to share. What's your perspective?
Yeah, Paul, thanks for starting off because it gave me a chance to think. So sorry about putting on the spot like that. But no, but what Paul was saying actually was really, really resonated with me. And he was talking about not just doing those well-being things as a one-off. It is about constantly practicing what we preach, literally, and remembering to do that. And what I've found when I'm working with other professionals or other men is that we need to try to help them understand that that's the important part about it. It's not just going on a well-being course and saying, well, I've done my well-being course, I'm all right now. It's actually getting them to be a part of their everyday life. And what I try to say to people, men and women, is that you've got to find somewhere in your day to put a little bit of well-being or self-care into the day, even if it's 5 minutes or just something to do for yourself. And as Paul said, it's got to be ongoing. And I try to explain to people that your well-being and your self-care has to be a non-negotiable priority. And people say to me, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, do you breathe? Yeah. Do you brush your teeth? Yeah. They're things you do automatically. And my aim is to help people to get to that point where well-being and self-care practices are up there with, the things they do all the time, eating, washing, that sort of thing, brushing your teeth. So it's not just an add-on at the end of the week or the day or when you're starting to feel a little bit low. So it's about, as Paul said, that constant practice, finding something that you do that's going to actually be of self-care, looking after your well-being, because it's only by doing it that way that we can maintain it rather than letting things go and then all of a sudden we get to that crisis point, which is what we want to avoid with people's well-being and mental health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the big mistakes, you know, we do to ourselves. And sometimes the messages out there is, once you've done this course, once you've done this training, once you've done what have you, you know, everything's going to be hunky-dory. And it's not. You are going to have crappy days. They are coming. It's called life. Every new experience, every new interaction you have with somebody is going to, you know, maybe trigger or stimulate some kind of reaction in you as well. So it's about having that toolkit, isn't it? That you can dip into. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what trainings and services have you found to be really useful for you personally that you've tapped into?
I'll sure quickly pause. That's all right. I'll give a quick response. I have done the latest things I've done is mental health first aid training. I found that really, really helpful, because what that did for me is just to sort of reiterate and go over some of the things that I've known for a while, but maybe not really have practiced. So going through the mental health first aid training for our staff at the mental health agency was great, but it also brought back into perspective and a bit more clarity some of the things that I need to do for myself, Donna. So I found that really great. That was one of the latest trainings that I've done that stuck with me. You know, they gave us the journal, the books. It was a very good online course. But yeah, it just reaffirmed for me the things that I need to do. And so it's not just about, as Paul said, speaking to other people. I've got to remember to do those practices myself and to be as consistent as possible as I can with them. So that's the thing I can relate to, the latest that I've actually been working on.
Yeah, no, they're very good, very good. Paul?
Yeah, no, I agree. First aid training is absolutely fantastic. Donna, you've seen the training that I did and that we've shared and encouraged people to share by the NHS on suicide awareness, how to talk about suicide, where that's facilitated. That was absolutely fantastic. I've also done the things on Train the Trainer that I then had to train people within organizations, which is all about how they can communicate, how they signpost. So people who are in call centers, people who answer the phones, if somebody is suicidal, if somebody mentions something about their mental health, how to spot the signs, how to signpost what to do, how to bring someone on board, the right measures in place and processes in place to protect themselves and also the person on the other end of the phone. So when to call the emergency services, when not to call the emergency services based on what's being shared, having they call it a coach within that organization on hand to pull to assist and support as well. And then personally, you know, I've always been interested in mental health since I was little. You know, I've shared previously, my dad was diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was 5. During my teenage years, I visited him in a mental health hospital. So, you know, I've seen a lot of stuff on there. So I've learned a lot of stuff from my dad, actually, because he became a mental health advocate as well. Within, you know, he managed to get himself well, get himself out of the system and out of the hospital. And he was really good at helping and supporting other people within there. So I've learned a lot directly from him as well and his experiences. And also used to ask lots of curious questions to the nurses and the practitioners that are around him as well. So, you know, always been something that I've been interested in constantly learning from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you do, for anybody that's interested, the Coaching Minds in the Hub, you've got the mental health awareness program going on. So Paul, would you be able to share the link later with regards to that so people can check that out? Because it also is great to do at work and spark that conversation amongst yourselves as well and dig that little bit deeper. So thank you very much for sharing that. I have to say that mental health first aid, I did mine in the UAE, but for adolescents, when I do the adult one, I will definitely be doing it through the UK. Fantastic organization as well, and the NHS has some fantastic things. Okay, so I'm curious to know what are some of the common misconceptions and stereotypes about masculinity and mental health have you encountered, you know, when you've done your little groups and so forth?
Another good question. Well, Donna, some of the sort of stereotypes that I've come across, in particularly working with black men and men from minoritized communities, is that number one, it's not a topic that men wanted to sort of talk about. Number one, they just don't want to talk about it. They'll talk about everything else openly, and joke about some things, but mental health, as soon as you say mental health, it's like, no, don't really want to like bring that up into open conversation. So what I found is that men are just really sort of, I wouldn't say afraid, but not wanting to show that side of it, that the mental side, the emotional side. And again, it's this stereotype about, men being strong and not crying, all that sort of stuff. And we know they're stereotypes, and as Paul said, they're being broken down and changed. But there are, a percentage of the male population that still hang on to that, or you can't talk about that. Even the simple practice of taking a lunch break. I remember when I was first, introducing the concept and what it's all about, self-care. I was getting responses like that. You don't need to take a lunch break. Lunch breaks is for wimps and all that sort. That sort of meant that sort of macho mentality. But I think it is changing. But just actually having conversations about mental health, I think it's a difficult one. But what we need to do as practitioners is create what I call a safe space for people to actually do that, and in particular men to feel that they're going to be taken seriously and not sort of be made to feel oh, I'm showing my weakness by actually talking about my feelings and my emotions, because it's not always the first topic that men sort of bring up in conversation. Let's say that then, that they do, but they are getting to talk about it more.
No, I completely agree, Michael. I've seen similar stereotypes there, and definitely there's that macho need to man up and be a strong man, and all about pride and all that sort of stuff. It still exists whilst it's been broken down, and I think it's we're starting to see the change in that. It still exists. I think it might. I don't know if it's in a question, just to pitch to you guys, anybody who's watching this, is that, do you think it's more of a generation thing? Do you think kind of the younger generations, the new generations, are more open to talk about their mental health, and that macho being a big strong man is kind of fading out a little bit? So just a question for you to reflect on it and put across to you guys. But the other thing I see as well, and I don't know if you agree with this, Michael, and when I think myself, actually, I kind of do this as well, but I tend to see that men, when they do want to open up, they prefer to open up to a woman. They prefer to talk to a female about what's going on rather than another man. And when I used to hear this, and when I've heard this during the training, I reflected back and I look back, and it's a preference of mine as well. I always prefer to open up to a feminine energy than I do to open up to another masculine. I don't know if that's just what I've heard in my personal experience, or if you agree to that as well, if that's what you've seen and observed.
Yeah, I have seen a little bit of that, Paul. But also what we try and focus on, the mental health agency that I work for here in Bristol, which is called Nilari, which is an African word which means hope and self-respect, is that we do have men's groups, and the men that actually come to the groups do find it a bit more comfortable to talk about that stuff with funny enough, with no ladies around, with no females around. But in therapy, because we have trained therapists as well, there has been a leaning to men wanting to talk to female therapists. So it's a bit of both going on with the agency that we work with. Yeah, it's really interesting. So the one-to-one therapists, mainly, they prefer to speak to women, but we do have men's groups, and a lot of them just come to the drop-in groups, and they're very happy to talk about it in groups of men there as well. So I'm actually witnessing both things, Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier, Michael, when you said about the guys not being open and talking. Or is it a case they are talking, but it's in a different language from how we would necessarily say we're struggling with this, we're struggling with that?
Yeah, that's a good point, Donna, and I think so. I think what it is it's getting able to understand how men, as you say, might want to talk about or start the conversation. Because probably what I've been finding is that one thing will lead to another. They just won't come straight out with it and say, like,
Yeah.
I'm really feeling emotional today. There'll be other things which will lead up to that. And so what I was actually talking about this on Saturday to a group about prostate cancer and mental health is that you need to be able to have a conversation rather than asking some tick box questions, because
Yeah.
you won't, it just won't work. So you need to have an open conversation. And what I've found, when you're having an open conversation with somebody, man or woman, you will get more information from a conversation than actually asking these direct questions all the time, which people usually shut down, especially men. They won't go for that. They'll just think, you're trying to interrogate me, or or therapy, because there's again a stigma with men going to therapy, don't really do it. So conversations are really important, to have conversations, real meaningful conversations with somebody, and wanting to find out about the whole person rather than just focusing on what's wrong. And I found that conversations work really well. A real genuine conversation, you get more out of it about the person rather than just picking and asking questions.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you want to add there, Paul?
Not really, no. Just that I agree with what Michael was sharing there, about that it being care, the importance of building rapport with people. It's also, at times, it's important to be direct. We always say, mean what we say, and say what we mean and mean what we say. But as Michael says, it needs to be that conversation. You need to be genuinely caring about that person, curious about what's going on for that person, and building up that rapport before, as Michael mentioned, instead of just having that checklist, because we do, especially men, we do see that as an interrogation, and we don't want to. It can kind of actually close us down and not want us to open up. So, really, really valid points and great points from Michael.
Yeah, and picking up on that as well. When you're talking about the, talking to men and women and kind of getting a different response, do you think it's maybe because women are a lot more, tend to be a lot more intuitive and will sense, things that aren't said, reading the body language a little bit more, whereas men will tend to, take what you say as face value, I suppose?
I would tend to agree with that, Donna. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that women are a bit more sensitive, I think, to emotions than men. Sometimes we can miss cues, but I believe that, yeah, women professionals, have that little bit more intuition, which helps to go with their professionalism as well. So I think it is a bit of an edge, and sometimes men might feel a little bit more at ease as well, as Paul was saying. Sometimes men want to talk to other female practitioners, professionals, about those sort of emotional feelings and that area of their lives rather than men. So I would kind of agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the same here, but you also get me thinking about a wider kind of issue, Donna, and I think the way our society's going right now, and one of the reasons why we probably miss a lot of cues, is because, and this is my personal observation, is we're not very present as individuals as we maybe used to be in the past. We're always in our phones. We've always got headphones on. If you go on a tube or a metro, people are always engrossed in what they're doing. Where we've got this whole self-love, self-care, focus on me, which is great. But the intention of focus on you is to eventually focus on other people as well and to help serve other people. So you need to give a bit of both. And I just feel like people are not as present as they used to be. And, if you're not present, if you're not paying attention, if you're not there, then you're not going to be able to pick up the cues and to pick up the signs to be able to help and support someone. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but it's just something I've been observing quite recently.
Yeah, I really do agree with that, Paul. Technology, not saying it hasn't been there, but I think technology is more present in our lives now. And it has its advantages. I'm not knocking it at all. There's some really great advantages to it, but there is the downside that we can use technology as a sort of a way of not connecting with people, like you said, not being present, and as a little bit of an escape. And I think we really need to come back to, I'm really trying to get into in-person meetings now, to meeting people in person, speaking to groups if I can in person. I'm willing to travel again because, the pandemic came and we used technology to keep in touch, but it's not quite the same as being in the room with the person, especially when you're talking to them about something as sensitive as feelings and emotions and mental health or physical health. You do miss a lot of, as you said, body language and cues by not being in the same room as them. And so I really do agree with what you said about, the pros and cons of technology then. But yeah, sometimes we can be a little bit too absorbed by technology, or distracted. Sorry, maybe it's a better word, distracted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Michael, do you mind just talking to us a little bit? Because you've got a few things on Facebook and you do these in-person events, which I think is fantastic and I'm always liking. And if people want to know more, they have to follow you on LinkedIn. So, but, you know, can you talk us through some of that and how it has been setting that up and trying to get your message out there?
Right, yeah, thanks, Donna. So the mental health charity that I work for here in Bristol is called Nilari, and we're a Black-led organisation, but we do work with anyone that comes to our doors. But we try to focus on the Black and minoritized communities because they are, as they say, a little bit more difficult to reach. And that's mainly because these cultures don't really want to talk about mental health at all. You know, it's just something that happens or is looked on very negatively. So what we've been doing at the agency, we have two courses, or not courses, two ways of reaching out. One is actually by Zoom, so you know, using it positively. We have a bi-monthly Zoom workshop which is called Black Men Talk Health, and that is a space that we create for men to come and talk about topics that we put up. Like the next one coming up in July is about stress, and we've actually got a female presenter who's going to be doing a little bit of a presentation and opening up for questions. And the reason that we've done that is because we just wanted to give men that safe space to come along. It's not recorded. They can come along and get some information, number one, ask questions and have discussions about whatever the topic is. And we found these to be really, really successful. You know, that men are using the Zoom to join in from wherever they are. They don't have to be from Bristol. They can be anywhere in the country. We get an email list and we send the link out to them and they join that way. And the second one, which we've just started this month in June, is called Raw Talk, RAW. And that again is an in-person drop-in session for men. So it's not a course. We just open up the office between 2 and 3:30 every Thursday for the month of June. And we have different topics and we just have men to come in, just sit down, have a coffee or drink with us, non-alcoholic, I hasten to add, and just discuss topics that really mean a lot to them. We did relationships last week. And what I've found, Donna, is that men are slowly sort of coming to these things. They haven't all rushed in. I'm not going to say it's been a massive success, but we are getting people coming in. But I think it's this thing about, oh, what's this? This is a bit new. And they're not too sure about it. But again, it's about us being consistent, saying, look, you know, the space is here for you. It's somewhere to go where you can come and relax. It's not a course. There's no pressure. So it's just about letting them know that there are safe spaces, because I think sometimes, you know, men might just maybe be in the pub chatting with mates, but you know, they're not going to be talking about this stuff there. So we're creating a space where they can actually come and talk about this sensitive stuff in a relaxed manner, basically. So we're trying to make it as relaxed and as non-threatening as possible.
No, perfect. Paul, do you have anything that's that you've been doing around this?
So not directly working with people, you know, we've got the mental health first aid course, but first of all, I just want to say, Michael, what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. You know, the work that you're pulling there is absolutely great, and you know, I really am inspired by what you do, and the ability to pull people in is fantastic as well. Because a lot of people, I think one of the challenges that we have when we do something like that is, you know, a lot of people, when they're suffering with their mental health, they want to be withdrawn. They don't want to socialize. They don't want to get out. So the way that you're using the words, your language is absolutely perfect to pull people in. So honestly, my hat's off to you for all the work that you put in. Really fantastic stuff. And I know you work with individuals directly. A lot of the training and things that I've done and that I continue to do, what we're trying to bring into Coaching Minds as well, completely for free. It's our, you know, voluntary side of things, is to help not the individuals who are suffering directly, but those who might be around, to be able to spot the signs, to be able to have that conversation, to be able to hold that space with someone that might spot, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at home, whether it's a family member, whether it's a stranger, but just to equip them with everything they need in order to spot the signs, understand really what mental health is all about, understand that we all have a mental health. I think one of the stigmas and things that we see is people just use the words and the terminology quite incorrectly. You know, are they struggling with mental health, or they've got mental health? No, we all have a mental health. It's just whether it's healthy or whether it's we're going through some problems and through challenges and we need to just do a bit of work on ourselves. So, you know, my training, a lot of stuff that I do is all around that, and helping people understand how they can support other people, trying to equip them with the tools that they need, the right areas to signpost, and when to signpost and when to have that conversation, how to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, no, and I think what is important as well, like when men do get that opportunity to go to discuss these issues and these concerns with themselves, that support needs to be there when they end up talking to their mothers, to their wives, to their sisters, to their partners, because as they start to become more open and more vulnerable within those groups, there is going to be a shift in their characters a little bit. So how do you have any suggestions of how they can have this discussion with the females in their life, supporting them with that? Because as we were saying about that stereotypical, a lot of women will turn around and say, man up, don't be so touchy, so sensitive. So how do you bridge that gap?
Another really good question, Donna. Another really good question that gets us thinking, and I think that's a challenge that we're all faced with. Michael's working with individuals directly. I'm working with people on how to support that. And one of the reasons that I'm really passionate about, I love to help both, and I want to have a little bit of discussion later on, Donna. It's just come to mind, is how do we as coaches learn to kind of hold that space with individuals, with clients, because there's a bit of a stigma in the coaching world where we just want to pass it on straight away if we get somebody that comes with a mental health diagnosis or something like that. So that's what I want to talk about later. But one thing I'm really passionate about is I tried to talk to a couple of my family members when I was going through my dark time, and I would get responses like, "Oh, you're not depressed, you're just going through a hard time," and it would just close off. So it's to bridge that gap's difficult, because that made me feel like I had no one to talk to. If you can't open up and the person that you're closest to or the people that you're closest to can't hold that space for you or have the right questions or care or try to understand, then it can be really difficult and you can close yourself even further. So the work that Michael's doing is really key to it, really. And I think it's both together. I think everybody needs that understanding that this is how I can support other people, and this is how I can get support myself through the various arms. And I think bridging the gap's quite difficult, and I think that's one of the challenges that we actually face as mental health advocates and trainers and practitioners, because it's what we're aiming to do. If that gap was bridged, I think things will be a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah,
absolutely, Paul. And this subject actually came up when I was doing a presentation on Saturday to prostate cancer awareness event, and it was I was speaking about creating a safe space for men to be heard, because we're talking about sometimes the difficulties men have about talking about their mental health, and yet alone having an illness like prostate cancer. So we're talking about the two things together, and what I was trying to advise or inform or instruct basically is about how to create a safe space for men, and that is by, because basically and maybe Paul will agree or disagree or set me straight on this, but when you're asking or a man a question, are you okay, the first thing they're going to say, that knee-jerk reaction is yes, I'm fine, and probably if you don't sort of follow up, you can just like take that as face value answer and move on. But I was actually helping people to say, well, you might have to ask that question maybe 2 or 3 times actually to get to the point where that man might say, well, actually, yeah, there is something going on. So you really need to be able to, number one, have the time, be persistent, as sometimes if it's a family relative or someone that knows that person, they will probably notice changes in behavior. That it might be the changes in behavior first of all they see before anything is said. And if you can pick up on those and then follow up with the questions and really let them know that you really want to know the answer, you're not just asking it because it's a question that everyone asks. And you create a non-judgmental space where you say, look, I really want to listen. Let's sit down, let's go out for a coffee or something. I know something, I can feel something's not right, and I've got some time for you to listen. So you actually have to reinforce that you are willing to spend some time listening to that man, because otherwise it's going to be a token gesture. You'll say, are you okay? They'll say fine, and that's it, and you're gone. So you have to create the space, make sure that it's non-judgmental, and allow them to have a conversation with you. And I found when I'm practicing is that once you allow them to feel comfortable and they start talking, all the information comes out, and it might be, you know, their life story, what they've gone through. But if you have or create the space and the time to listen, you will find out so much more. And I've found that happening on a regular basis now. You create the space, you let them know that you're not in a rush, you know, they got things to say, you need to be there to listen. And it's actually the power of listening just opens up so many doors. And I've had countless men say that, you know, this is the first time I've actually felt listened to, and I remembered that because it's a sentence I hear time and time again. Or they'll say things like, "My family don't understand; they won't listen to me." So creating that safe space where they can be heard is, I think, the beginning of the process of getting the support that they need.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to say something, Paul?
So I was just going to jump in at, 100%, Michael. You just sparked a conversation I was having about a week ago, just randomly with a friend about this whole, how are you? Are you okay? It's just a surface level question, and everybody's going to respond that they're good or they're doing okay. Very rarely, especially if, just random people that you see in the street or you're in the shop, no one's going to turn around and say, no, I'm not doing good. They're always going to say that, yes, we're fine, or yes, we're okay, generally, unless we're close friends. If you've got that strong rapport with somebody, there's more opportunity that they're going to open up to you. And I really like what you're sharing there about that safe space. And it's some of the training that I've done within organizations with managers in terms of when they spot behavior, not to immediately go to discipline. A lot of managers can go, if somebody's coming in late every day during the week, or they're not hitting their levels, instead of going straight to discipline, just do what we mentioned there, Michael. Take them, sit them down and just say, look, is everything okay? I'm concerned. You've been coming in late. This is not like you. And just by creating that safe space that you want to listen, and you're caring for them, and you want to understand what's going on, will build a lot of, and maybe there's nothing going on. Maybe they're just late because the car's been broken down, or they've been missing the bus, or it might not be something serious, but at least you're having that conversation in case it is, and you can get that information. You can then support, and you build up that relationship with that direct rapport. So that's a lot of the training we've been doing within organizations on that as well, and changing the way that managers react or respond to certain behaviors that come from their members of the team.
Yeah. Yep. Paul and Doc, can I just pick up on what you just said, Paul, because it's a really important point. And not only does it go for the managers spotting the changes in behavior, there is also a self-responsibility and accountability for ourselves as well to speak up. And the story that I'm going to tell is very close to home with my wife, basically. She's a consultant pediatrician here in the UK. As you can imagine, working for the NHS, lots of pressure. Lots of targets and things to be done. Now, a colleague of hers has actually gone off sick due to the pressures of work, just too much pressure. And they are now actually, so her colleague, one of her colleagues is actually off on long-term sick, and everyone else is having to sort of spread her work across. And so, again, more pressure and more pressure. Now, my wife was also, again, loads of things to do. But what she did, she actually went to management and said, look, do you know what? I've got a really lot of tasks on my plate, and it feels like it's getting a bit unmanageable. And so she had the strength and the courage to actually mention what she was going through. And she said the response from her colleagues was absolutely overwhelming. She wasn't expecting the response. Basically, everybody just got together and split the task that she had among them so that to reduce the pressure on her. And she was just reflecting with me and saying, if her colleague had did the same thing, she would have got the help she needed. So I think we need to have a balanced conversation. Yes, it's for our managers to be able to spot things, and they've done mental health first aid, but we have to sometimes as well speak up for ourselves. And it's not an easy conversation to have. But I think the surprising thing is, there could be, help and support available, but we just need to find the courage to ask for it, or to say, look, I'm not coping really well here. I need support. And we might be really pleasantly surprised. But again, there is that fear that if you speak up, you're going to be looked at as someone that's weak. She's a consultant pediatrician. She's at the top of her field. She hasn't got anywhere else to go promotion wise, but she still find the courage to say, I'm struggling, I need help. And like everyone came in around and supported her, rather than sort of said, sort yourself out, go away, sort of thing. So again, sometimes we have to be quite brave. So there's a safe space, and maybe there's a brave space, and that brave space is coming out and saying, do you know what, I need help. I need help at work. Can you help me? And I think we might be quite surprised that the help is actually available. So it's having the balanced conversation. It goes both ways.
It is, but also you've got to be careful depending on the organisation. Whilst what your wife did was 100% correct, but if she's at the top of her field, maybe her line manager can understand that. But if you're talking about somebody who's in catering for the hospital or a porter or what, and they turn around and say, I'm struggling, and their manager or what have you says, well, you're not a doctor, you're not saving lives, you just got to do you see what I mean? So again, it's about having that culture of kindness and, you know, allowing people to be open and to be vulnerable. But I can see why some people will struggle saying that I need help, when they could be working side by side with somebody who has a lot of responsibility and think, who am I to turn around and say that?
And I think on the flip side, Donna, as well, one thing I've observed in organizations is it could actually be more difficult the more, you know, senior they are in the organization. They feel more difficult to open up because they've got so much responsibility, and they don't want to be seen as weak or seen as struggling to their team, to the people that are working with them and the managers above. So I've also observed, I think the higher people get up in an organization, it is also more difficult for them to open up as well, because they feel like they've got a lot more at stake and that they're feeling as a leader or a manager at that point. So I think there's two sides of the coin there, but definitely see what you're saying as well. So
actually, there's not two sides to the coin, because when you break it down, we're all human. Doesn't matter what job title we have, doesn't matter what class, what country, what religion, if you're male or female. As you said, mental health does not discriminate, and they don't just give it to CEOs and, you know, all this lot. It's all of us. And there's times we can cope with a certain workload and pressures at home, and there's other times we can't, for whatever reason they may be, and that needs to be respected. So whoever comes looking for support, you're looking at a human being at the end of the day, not that job title.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Donna, and it's true. But as Paul was saying, sometimes what we see first and what's projected first is the job title and the position, and then the actual person doesn't actually get noticed. But as you say, you know, it's part of the same coin. But I think that this is the problem. We're looking at the position and what they do, and we forget about that. Actually, this is a person, it's a human being doing this job. And I think that's where, as Paul said, that's where the balance comes in. It's about being able to understand that yes, he is the CEO, but he's got a family, a wife, children as well, just like everybody else. He's got a home to go to, and another life to live. But all we see is that snapshot of the person in the office doing their job, and it's about connecting the two, or connecting the two sides of the coin, or the person. Then sorry.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. But yes, that is the challenge. That is the challenge, and some people don't want to show their vulnerable human side. All they want to show is the leader, the CEO, the person that's getting it right all the time and leading everybody, and you know, everyone looks up to. So revealing your human side can be very difficult. Yeah.
I remember when I was at school, there was this saying, I can't remember what the hell the subject was, but somebody turned around and said, we are all the same. If you cut me, cut you, cut somebody, we all bleed. We're one. So, you know, again, when we're in pain and in anguish, we're trying to provide for your family. You know, men do have that on the upside as well, that pressure to provide. And, you know, again, that stereotype of how much you are providing, what house you're providing, what car you're providing, what clothes, you know, it's an awful lot of pressure for any one person to take on their shoulders. Just before we go, because we've got about 10-15 minutes left, I just want to tap in and say, right, looking ahead, what do you envision as the future for mental health training and services becoming available? Or what would you like to see start trending?
That's a really good question.
I think for me, so I'll go first, Michael, and give you some time to think about it. She's full of good questions today. I think for me, and we touched upon it a bit earlier about checklists, is I really want to see more organizations. Organizations are starting to understand the importance of the well-being in their organization, the importance of a healthy culture, of looking after the people, supporting the people. I think there is starting to be a bit of a shift from numbers and levels of service to actually caring for the people that are within the organization. I'd personally like to see more of that and actual care and want to do more about well-being rather than just using it because I think sometimes companies can just use well-being as a check. Yep, we've done well-being, we've got somebody in, they've done a course, that's it. But actually embedding it into the culture by training their managers, by training their leaders, by educating their staff, by bringing in mindfulness practices as teams and things like that. So I would like it to go that way. I think there's a bit of a shift towards it. I think we're still a bit of a long way off. But from my experience, from what I've seen, what I've observed, that's what I hope it will go to in terms of, because companies, I think, we spend most of our time at work than we do at home. No matter what career we're in, we spend 9 till 5. If we stay within those hours of 9 till 5 and not put in more, then we spend the majority of our time at work. So companies need to understand the influence that they have on the well-being and the mental health of the people that work for them. So I'm hoping that we can see that shift.
Yeah. Paul, I 100% agree with you, and I'm actually working on something at the moment, Donna and Paul, which I will tell you about later. But it's very much in the vein of what you've been talking about, and I can't mention any more yet because I haven't finished it and got it sorted out and covered yet. But what I do, I will let you know, because it's exactly what you're saying, exactly the way I feel, and I think that's the only way we're going to have any major changes, is if we can look at organizations, the senior leadership teams, and it starts from them and comes down. It has to be from the top down, because if we change the culture of the organization, then that's how we're going to make a better platform for people to talk about experience, looking at well-being and mental health in a positive way, rather than it's a negative thing and I don't want to discuss that at work because I feel threatened I might lose my job, blah blah blah, the stereotypes that are there now. So yeah, Paul, I'm 100% with you on that. So I've got nothing to add apart from this thing that I'm working on. Once I've got it sorted out, I will come back to you and let you know what it's all about. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I'm intrigued.
What a way to spark curiosity, no?
Exactly. Let me press stop recording and you can tell us. Doesn't matter about everybody else. Well, that is really, really exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more, and I hope it, comes to fruition very, very soon. Before we go, do you have any tips for men who, are looking for certain trainings or courses or support groups? How do they start looking? Or maybe what do they need to be careful of as well, because you will get some that will exploit. So yeah.
My sort of general tip for men who want to actually start talking about their mental health and well-being is to find someone that they trust to start the conversation. And that might not necessarily be a family member, it could be a really good friend, but just to find someone that they genuinely feel that they can start a conversation with. And this thing about creating the safe space, they might not know how to do it, but if they can find someone that they can reach out to and have a conversation about this, that might be the beginning of it, because then maybe that person can signpost and help them. But I think it's just finding someone that you feel comfortable and safe to open up to, and that will take, for a man, I think, will take a lot to find the right person. But if they can, with someone that they trust, I think having a conversation or starting a conversation knowing that that person's going to listen, I think would be the best tip for me. Try to find someone you can trust to talk to. I think I think that's the simplest thing I could say.
Yeah.
No, that's super important, Michael. And I think the important thing that I like to mention is, one thing when I've done a lot of research, a lot of men, when they get into difficult situations or they're starting to get these dark times, it can generally be due to finance. They're struggling with their finance, struggling to provide. So I think the key tip or message for me is there's a lot of services out there that are free. There's a lot of great people that are willing to support you for free. So I think sometimes we can talk ourselves out. I can't afford a therapist. I can't afford a coach. I can't afford this. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's free. And then linking that into what Michael says, it's about talking to that person, because when you're doing research, it's overwhelming in general in this day and age. In this modern society, there's so much information at our fingertips. When you're looking for something, even in good mental health, it can be overwhelming. So it's even more overwhelming when you're in a place where you're struggling, you're going through a dark time. So as Michael said, find somebody to talk to, and then they can do that research for you. They can help you. They can signpost you to the right place that's going to help you and give you that additional support. So that's just what I want to add, Donna, as a tip.
Yeah, no, they're great tips, and I absolutely agree. And it's funny. I'm going to share with you. It was on a bus, it was on an aeroplane, and it was in a taxi. 3 different times I had conversations with men, and at one stage I was 19, and I was a complete stranger to them, and they just opened up and pretty much told me their whole life story there and then. And each of them said that was the first time. They were married, they had kids, one guy wasn't, but they weren't able to tell their own, wives and even their parents what had happened to them when they were younger and the struggles that they're going through now. And I think the most important thing is that you just start talking. It could be with a complete stranger that you meet. The one that really stuck with me was I was up north in Newcastle and was getting a taxi, and the taxi driver just opened up and talked about when he was gang raped when he was younger, and it's just really affecting him now. And he just started crying in the taxi. He hadn't told his wife. I was the first person that he'd spoken to. And I remember that hitting me pretty hard for him, because I had to leave. There was nothing, so we had this conversation, and he promised that he was going to go and seek, some counseling. I don't know whether he did or he didn't. I'm hoping he did. And he took off his ring and gave it to me, and not his wedding band, another ring, gave it to me and thanked me. It was just like, okay, don't do that. And thanked me, and I've still got it today, like 40 years later, pretty much. Well, 35 years later. So I think at the end of the day, if you're meeting somebody and you feel comfortable and you've got that opportunity to speak, that is your first step. Just get it out, because as soon as you've articulated it out loud, you'll find out it's not as scary to actually start to have those conversations that are going to move you forward. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And just on that note, I just want to throw one last tip out, Donna, one last piece of words of advice, because 3 coaches, 1 topic, and I'm sure you agree with me, Donna, Michael, you agree. I encourage every coach out there to find some form of mental health training and educate yourself on this topic, because we get so many clients, we don't know who's going to walk through our door, and we need to get rid of this other stigma in the coaching world, which is if they've got a mental health diagnosis, we just need to refer them to a therapist. We need to pass them on. You're there, they're confiding in you, they trust in you. You need to be able to hold that space, and maybe you're not equipped to support them right there and then, but at least you're equipped to signpost them, to hold that space and offer them that space to really have that conversation. And like you mentioned, Donna, in that taxi there, what sparked my memory is being able to just hold that space and have that conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100% agree, Paul. And like you did, Donna, the most powerful thing that I guess that you did there was you listened. You were able to listen, and that is just a major step for some people to be heard. And like you're saying, that could be the first time that you actually felt heard. And I just, 100% agree. Just giving that person a chance to be heard.
Yeah, exactly. And not being judgmental, being curious, and look, we don't walk in other people's shoes. We know what our journey has been, and we have absolutely no right to throw or cast the first stone at another human being, when we can't possibly know what they've gone through. So just be generous with your time and just listen and care. All right, on that happy note, any last wisdom bombs you want to share before we sign off and say goodbye?
Well, it's on the shirt, Donna, and I always say it, always take your lunch break. Doesn't matter what you do, where you are in the world, it's an act of self-care. Always take your lunch break, never skip it.
Awesome.
I love that, Michael. I love hearing you say it every time. And I think just the key point for me today is that, we've talked about it, the mental health doesn't discriminate, and there's always you.
Oh, sorry, Paul, we lost you there.
So I said mental health doesn't discriminate, and there's always support out there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you so much, both of you, I know you're both extremely busy, and I really appreciate you coming on and discussing this topic. What I will invite you to do is if you can email me some of the links as well, so I can put it in other places. But any links that you have when this comes out, please drop them in there so people can reach out to you and find out about those organizations and courses that are going on. So on that note, guys, thank you so much again. Thank you for watching. Any questions, please pop them in the comment section, and Paul, Michael, or myself will get back to you as soon as we can. So on that, thank you very much and have a great evening.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna.
Bye.